homelessness. And so to introduce our next speaker, I'm actually going to have one of our members, Todd Schenk, come up and introduce Colleen. And I'll note that Todd flew in all the way from Alaska, so maybe the person who traveled the farthest for this, but if anyone would like to contest that, please let me know.
Yeah, if you're going to get here from Alaska, you're probably going to take a red eye, which is what I do. But anyway, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate it. So I'm going to introduce Colleen Echohawk, and I'm really privileged to do this. And let me get let me get her professional bio out of the way first. She heads up the Chief Seattle Club, which those of you from Seattle and King County know her work very well. She also has founded an organization called the Coalition to End Urban Native Homelessness, which I think is really interesting, and I hope she will talk about it a little bit. You know, I'll say that in Alaska, and when I think about our work around ending homelessness, we have kind of multiple facets to that. Well, as it relates to Alaska Native homelessness, we have an issue both with urban Alaska Native homelessness and rural homelessness. So I really love the work that you're trying to sort of tee up there. She's an enrolled member of the Echohawk Band of the Pawnee Nation, as well as the Upper Athabascan people of Mentasta Lake. And what I'll just say briefly about Colleen, three things that I appreciate about you. And we recently hosted a convening in Anchorage around, well, actually it was convened by a national working group that USICH and HUD and Interior hosted on addressing homelessness and housing instability for Alaska Native and American Indian people. And Colleen was gracious enough to come and facilitate that conversation for us. And I'll say that in the planning and design phase, you were by far the loudest and most persistent voice, always reminding us that people with lived experience and lived expertise are the main driver of change and success. And so I really appreciate that. Secondly, I'll say you were very clear about calling out racism, structural racism, in the ways that has impacted lots of people. And I think I really appreciate that your courage around that and your insistence on doing that. And thirdly, you are a very easy person to like and to admire. And I think about 5 minutes after you meet Colleen, you'll want to spend more time with her and learn from her. So we're very appreciative of your time today. So thank you.
I'm going to use this mic because I hate standing behind one of these things. So, well, thank you, Todd, so much for that lovely introduction. You left before I could give you a hug. I think that the thing about me is mostly I just like people and believe in people and like hanging out with people. So I'm glad to be with you all today and get to share a little bit of my work and also just to get to hopefully inspire you to think about culturally specific organizations and how we respond to race disparity within our homeless community. I'm going to begin with just a little reminder that we are on Native land right now. And I would, and I usually, I do this every time I give a talk, and I usually have a prize for somebody, but I forgot them at my sister's house. I'm seeing my sister. But is there anyone here who could offer up who the first people of this land is? Anyone from here? I don't actually know, so I'm looking Stephanie. Stephanie is going to remind us.
I have to consult my notes. The Piscataway, yep.
Say it again.
The Piscataway?
The Piscataway. Okay, so we're on Piscataway land, and I'm going to remind us all that Native communities, we always had wonderful systems for housing. No one was homeless, and we know how to take care of our community, and we do that through the ancestors who are guiding us in this work now. And this is a picture of my grandma. Her name is Katie John. She grew up on the banks of the Copper River. She could tell you a million stories about her. that she has taught me so much, and she's passed on. But I believe that the ancestors in this space, in this room, the same air molecules of air that the staff people were breathing, we're breathing right now. That's just science, right? And it's just so cool to think about what we can learn from the ancestors, what they have pushed us forward into doing this work today. And so I just want to offer that up to you today as we begin. And as I begin, as we think about that, because that may be a kind of a shift in the way you might think. But that's why we think about Native people. When we think about cultural responses to homelessness, we have to think about the culture of the people that we're working with. We also have to think about how we participate in that culture. One of the things I struggled with when I first started working in mainstream homelessness, and I would come to conferences like this, was feeling very isolated, because I come from a way different kind of culture. Our conferences are not like this. I invite you to think about that for a minute. This conference, the larger conference, is largely dominated by white culture. What is it like for folks who don't experience that culture every day to have to go into this? I work with just Native community usually. And it can be difficult, it can be hard, it can feel off and weird. But I am passionate about the work, and every single person that I meet at these conferences, funders, non-funders, and I tell them the story of Native homelessness, 99% are like, what can we do? How can we support you? And I love that, because I know and believe that there are allies in this room who are going to help support the work and push us forward to see a reduction in Native homelessness. So what I'd like to do as we begin is start this time off the way we would start off a meeting in the Native community, which is with song. And so I want to sing to you a song that my grandma Katie taught me. This song is from the Upper Otna Athabascan people in Alaska. We have a community of 11 villages that are all connected. And when we get together for a potluck or for a gathering, this is a song we always sing. It's called, you'll hear the word Tanacross. Tanacross actually means welcome. So I want to welcome you into this space and welcome you into this conversation and invite you to think with some pretty open, expanded minds. Considering that if the spirits of the ancestors are with us, that we have such important, exciting work to do together. I'd also like to invite you to stand. This is was anybody at the GEO conference, by the way, in Seattle? Okay, so you know this song. Okay, because we did this at the GEO conference. My sister was with me, and she was like, we didn't know, like, I started off the conference, and she ended it, and we had no idea until like 2 days before, and so we were like, let's do this song together. And she reminded me that it's also a really like, if we were in Natasta, it'd be like we dance. Okay, and the dance is easy. It's just like, it's just like this, like, and you could bend down a little bit, and you can go up, and you can just like be cool, or you can do the side to side white dance. That's fine. That's fine. However you want to do it. But I'll sing the song. If you remember the song, you're welcome to sing with me, and you're welcome to participate in a cultural practice. Okay. I'm gonna put this down because I'll sing loud. On a Tanacross, on a hira hira ha hey, hira hira ha hey, on a Tanacross, on a hira hira ha hey, hira hira ha hey. I'm all out of breath. You know, years ago now, 5-ish years ago, I was a board member at the Chief Seattle Club, and I fell in love with our mission to provide a sacred space to nurture, affirm, and renew the spirit of urban Native people. And we needed that in Seattle because we have a huge crisis of Native homelessness. Our most recent point in time counts show that 10% of the Native 10% of our homeless population is Native. We make up less than 1% of the total population. 15% of the veteran homeless population is Native. We have the highest rates of service in the military amongst the Native community. This is my friend Lloyd. I adore him. I came into the work and our previous director resigned. We couldn't find anyone. And again, as I said to you earlier, it was a nudge from the ancestors who pushed me forward into this work. I grew up with a parent, two parents. One of them, I just want to get rid of this thing real quick. My dad, and I'll show you some pictures of him earlier, came from a very amazing Native community in rural Oklahoma. My mom was from rural Alaska. They met. And my dad had at one point hitchhiked from Seattle to Alaska. So I have very clear memories of as a child driving through rural Alaska, and my dad would see a hitchhiker and be like, we're picking him up. He could not resist a hitchhiker. One day he did it. He picked up this hitchhiker. It was a Native man. His name was Ambrose. And Ambrose just got in my dad's heart. And so my dad said, well, let's bring him home for a while. He was homeless. He had been a victim of boarding schools. He had been in the military. And my dad said, let's bring him home for dinner. And that dinner turned into 3 years. And so I got to grow up with Ambrose. Long story short, he became homeless in Seattle. And then my auntie, who lived in Seattle at the time, said, you know, he died on the streets of Seattle. Heartbreaking. Because I'd grown up with him for 3 years. I knew him well. One day I'm at the Chief Seattle Club, and I think, you know, if he was homeless in Seattle, he would have probably come through our system, type his name into our system, and lo and behold, he had been there 3 days before and was not dead. I ran up to him in a breakfast one day and said, and I was nervous. He hadn't seen me since I was like 10 years or 11 years old. I said, hi, do you recognize me? And he said, no. And I said, well, I'm Howard Yvonne, Echohawk's daughter. And he just leapt back in his chair. He said, do you still play piano? Because we used to play piano all the time. And we had this awesome reunion, and I found out that he had been using the services at the Chief Seattle Club. The Chief Seattle Club serves Native people and is led by Native people because we love our community and because we've had so many of our folks who have just experienced homelessness after homelessness after homelessness. Even my own father has experienced homelessness. And so it has become a part of my life and my passion, and I feel so lucky to come to work every day, to get to hang out with some of the most important people in Seattle. One day I came into our building. We're right in the downtown corridor of Seattle and Pioneer Square. And right under that window, I saw this amazing, beautiful lady. She looked pretty old. She had gorgeous white hair all done up in like a French twist, very sophisticated. She had on bright pink lipstick. She was standing there smoking a cigarette. And I also noticed, I was aware of all that, but I also was aware that she had an oxygen tank right next to her. I was a little worried about the combination of all of those things. And I stopped to talk to her, and I started to get to hear her story. This is only about 1 year into my time at the Chief Seattle Club. And I started to hear a little bit more about her life and her story. She was 73 years old. For the past 10 years, she had been mats on the floor in a shelter close by. I like to show and remind all of us, this is what it's like. It is not good, especially for an elder. My heart went out to her. We didn't know what to do. At that time, our budget was like $600,000. We barely had anything. It was super, super hard. I had started to get involved in the larger community by then, because at first I had to just get things stabilized. We started getting involved. I met someone from United Way, and I went to him and I begged him. I said, listen, we need a housing case manager. Like this woman, Barbara, she cannot spend another night on the floor. I honestly will say I was relentless. And those of you who are funders in the room, you're all funders. That was not easy to do. That was hard, but there was a need. There was an elder, and she was one of many that was just incredibly suffering. We found out in the data, I started looking at the data too, I didn't know. In 2015, 87% of the Native people who got the call for housing through coordinated entry did not access that housing. 87%. I started hearing more about Barbara, and I'll tell you a little of her story that will help you understand why she didn't access that housing. She grew up isolated from her family. She was taken away from her family and put into a boarding school system. This boarding school system, she endured incredible amounts of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, let alone the abuse of just being taken away from her family and community. When she got out of that boarding school system, she was no longer able to reconnect with her family. They were gone. She didn't know where they were at. She fell into homelessness. She fell into hardship. She wandered from city to city. She had children. She lost contact with those children. And she ended up in Seattle 4 years ago, homeless on the streets for 10 years in a shelter just like this. So afraid of the institutions. So afraid, like she was so afraid to like put her name, she wouldn't realize to put her name in the HMIS system. We have many folks like that. They don't want their name in there. They're so scared of what the government might do to them. Again, she refused to let me take her picture, and she was so embarrassed because all her teeth were gone. And so we went to United Way, and Vance Manuelitos, who's no longer with us, said, you know what? You're right, completely out of cycle, gave me $50,000 for a housing case manager that started our rapid rehousing program, which now is over 12 staff, I think at this point, and we're housing more and more people every day. With Barbara, we realized that one of the things that she needed most was connection to culture, connection to community. And so we started like just pouring into her. My housing case manager that we hired found her housing within only about a month. It was like fast, because she trusted him. And because she was so vulnerable, we were able to find housing that was appropriate for her. She had troubles, you know. There are times when she needed help with hoarding, right? So we had to go in and clean out her place, but we had to check on her all the time, right? So once a week, there was a case manager that went and visited with her. And then she would, every day, even though her housing was there, it was only a couple blocks from our center, which is a day center and community center and this cultural space. She would come and be with us every single day. She ate breakfast, she hung out. We were very fortunate to have traditional medicines on hand, traditional medicines like cedar and sage and sweetgrass. We also had traditional medicine people that we would bring in from neighboring tribes, and they would sit and work with her and be with her and encourage her. And one day, our case management team went to visit her and check on her, and she was laying on the floor and had a stroke or something. And at this point, she was 76-ish, and not in great health the whole time. So they called the medics, they took her up to the hospital, and the case manager sent me a text and said, you know, I don't really know what to do. And our case managers are young. We have a ton of millennial native people working with us because they're so passionate about the work. We have almost 80% of our staff is native because, not of course we would hire anyone, but because of their passion for the community, they want to work with us. So this one young one called me and texted me and said, Colleen, I don't really know what to say to Barbara, but I'm just telling her I love her. I said, perfect, wonderful, because that is the community, that is the ancestors speaking to and through you. And so she said, I love you, and then another case manager came in, and it was throughout the night, and she said, she texted me in the morning, said, Colleen, Barbara passed. She goes, I didn't know what to do. Barbara was from a Plains tribe in South Dakota. Nwishtamai was from Yakima. She goes, but I just started singing her the old Yakima Longhouse songs. And I sang her the songs, and I sang her the songs, and then she just left and went into the arms of the ancestors. And that is the work. That is the work, to bring back our community into a place of culture and love and acceptance. There's been so many things that have hurt us as a community and has ensured that we are more likely to be homeless than almost anyone. And now it is our responsibility. I tell people it is my sacred responsibility to take back our right to love and house and be with each other as community. There were government action after government action that didn't allow us to do that. But we are taking that back as, and it is our not just our responsibility, but it is our right. In Native people, as I mentioned, in Seattle, Native people are 10 times more likely to be homeless than any other population. We also know that we have a significant amount, the highest rate I'm sorry, if you're unsheltered and you're experiencing homelessness and you're Native, you are more likely to be unsheltered, right? So this one is directly from our point in time count report, and I was just like blown away by it. We're right in the same category as someone who is transgender or multiple races, highest rates of being unsheltered. This is my awesome buddy Shiloh. He was a vet, is in housing, working in our program. I'm like into him. Here's some of the work that we do. We do all the traditional stuff of like, just the things, those basic needs, but we also do things like art programming. That has been huge. That's our longest running program. When we hardly had any money, we did art programming. And that can be like reconnection with like traditional arts and crafts. We do everything like drum making classes, to moccasin making classes, to, then we might do origami one day. We'll mix it up. And also we do the traditional spiritual work, right? So 5 days a week we have a traditional healer there. That is the hardest thing to fund, right? People don't understand like how important it is, how vital it is to have that traditional healer there. So I usually have to go to a private donor and be like, help me out here, because it's hard, it doesn't fit into most traditional grant making. We do job training. Our job training program, I invite you to check it out. It's called Native Works by Chief Seattle Club. It's online. We realized that the mainstream job, vocational rehabilitation, all that stuff was just not working. We had people just falling out of it. We tried to get them into it, and it just didn't work. And again, it was because of it being such a culturally isolating place. And so we decided to start our own program called Native Works. It is, I wish I could do a whole talk just about that. So I invite you to check it out online. And then we also, of course, do work with legal and all the things we do. I think that the thing about the work that we do at the Chief Seattle Club is because we have, it's Native-led, our board is 80% Native, our staff is 80% Native. We just believe so much that our community can succeed. We are seeing it happen, and I can't even imagine what the potential impact on mainstream society will be once we get all of our people indoors. We have this one amazing individual, Richie. He was homeless for years and years. One of the major issues is that Native people are way overrepresented in prison systems, foster care systems, two predictors of homelessness, right? Those two systems. And so we have people who come out of prison and they immediately come into our agency, even though we don't have a traditional reentry program, but we just have to function as one because we're there and we're their community. Richie, man, awesome guy, came out of prison, got a job, then started working for us, but was still homeless because it just was so hard to find housing. He eventually found housing, and I said to him one day, I'm like, hey, what are you doing with your time now? Because it's so hard to like try to be, you guys know, it's hard to be homeless. It takes a lot of time. And I said, what are you doing? He's like, well, I've been reading. I said, great. What are you reading? Oh, he was embarrassed to tell me this. He goes, I had to go to the library and get this. He's like, I've been reading neuropsychology. I'm like, you're reading neuropsychology? His mind is so brilliant and so like, and I just always think like, what would his impact be in a civil dialogue? What would his impact be on city council? I mean, there's just so many things. And so there's having a Native-led organization, it's different. We just have so much faith and believe that we can do this. And it's been, it's just such a joy. I invite you all to come by Chief Seattle Club, by the way. We're also realizing that we have to be involved in policy. Now, I want to ask you, if you have any impact or working any kind of policy, be asking yourself, where is the Native voice? Why are we not there at the table? And often it's because we've never been invited or we don't know about it. I mentioned to you earlier Vince Manuelitos from United Way of King County. When we first met, one of the first things he did to me is say, Colleen, you need to come and present to our Continuum of Care Board. I had no idea what a Continuum of Care Board was. The Continuum of Care Board was a system that was set up to keep me out. And so I had no idea what it was like because no one had ever thought to invite the Native community to it until 5 years ago. Since then, once I realized, we have infiltrated many of the committees. We have one of my staff co-chairs our coordinated entry committee. One of my other staff has had a huge influence on the point in time committee. I have spent a lot of time and energy and money to try to make sure that my staff can be involved in policy, because what is good policy for Native people is also good policy for everyone. That is something that is a rough shift to make, I know, but I have seen it happen over and over again. Our influence on the point in time count, for instance, it was good for so many other communities as well who were saying, yes, we have been completely undercounted. So we believe that Native people and other people of color should be at the tables. And if you know that we are disproportionately represented in the homeless community, then find ways to 10%, since we're 10% of the homeless community in Seattle, I'm like every board 10%. It's a simple way to do it, but it's just the way that we're doing it now. We also realized that we had to have our own way to kind of pull everybody together. So we started the Coalition to End Urban Native Homelessness about 3 years ago. We are on social media, but we don't have a website, and we just are hiring a half-time coordinator for this coalition because it's just gotten so crazy busy. Thanks to the Seattle Foundation for funding that. We realized we could do some better work if we were together. So we were able to do a lot of policy work together. I think one of the most important things we did, though, is the city of Seattle opened up their homelessness dollars for the first time in 12 years. We applied as a coalition. And at that time, we were 7% of the homeless population. The city of Seattle gave us 7% of their funding. Wow. It was so great. And it happened because we came together to do it. And let me tell you, again, I could give you a whole nother talk about all the incredible barriers that were against us in this, but we persisted. We have a unique perspective on homelessness in the Native community. This is a picture of my ancestors in front of the Earth Lodge. These are Pawnee people. And this is one of our, I love this picture because it shows one of our housing systems right behind these guys. My tribe was originally from Kansas and Nebraska. We had our own walk of tears from Kansas and Nebraska to Oklahoma. Along the way, we lost thousands and thousands of people. When this picture was taken, there was about 15,000 Pawnee people. By the time in the 1910 census, there was only 600 of us left. And I'm a direct result of those people. This is a picture of my dad. I'm a direct link to those people, descendant. This is a picture of my dad. My sibling said this to me the other day. He was like, did you realize that Dad is only 50 years from the genocide? That kind of blew my mind a little bit. I hadn't thought of it in that framework. That means that I'm only like 74 years from the genocide. My dad, amazing human, gave me a wonderful childhood. Really amazing childhood. Do we struggle? Yes, today. One of the things I started thinking about, he often would tell me the story about how when he was younger, they lived on the reservation, and he was the oldest one in his family. And sometimes his dad would go off for a really long time, and they wouldn't have any money, and they wouldn't have any food. And he tells a story about how he had to walk into town one time with these shoes that were way too big, and he had some very, very small amount of money to buy a can of beans to bring back to his family. The impact of that, we all know about adverse childhood experiences. The impact of a starving child and what it means in their brain, I have to think a lot about. Now that my dad and I are both older, and sometimes we struggle. He voted for Trump. I know. I adore him and love him. And I have to think about that. I think about that because I serve a lot of people who are in his age range. What was that experience like for them? How do I better serve them? One thing that I think often about too is like, there's so many mental health things that are related to brain development. I don't know. This is something I'm processing right now, but I wanted to share with you all. When we think about why Native people are homeless and more likely to be homeless, we still have these things that are reverberating through our bodies. Trail of tears, relocation, termination, massacres, continued broken treaties, ongoing racism that impacts our community. I know that I have a lot of folks who we work with who I've said, you know, why don't you just go into, we have this like new navigation center. It's not new, it's a year or so old. Trying to get them in there. And originally we worked so hard. When it first opened, there was 12% of the folks in that nav center were Native. I think it's around 3 or 4% now. They just couldn't, it was too much like the systems that they had been a part of. And so as I was like, I've been processing this, I realized that we had to take back some of the control ourselves. So I threw together a few things in when I was thinking about this time with you all. How do we do it? I think the number one thing for me is to trust the community. And I will tell you that I say this out of experience, that no one trusts our community. They just don't. They just put us in this like category of you're a drunk Indian or you don't have the capacity to do it. I personally hate capacity grants. It's, number one, the name itself is paternalistic. Do I have the capacity? Are my ancestors pushing me forward? Have we always known how to take care of our people? Yes. And so I also happen to have a master's degree. I've done a lot of things in my life. I know how to run my organization. And when I first started, people kept saying, oh, you need this capacity grant, you need this capacity grant. I personally, it's my own personal opinion, if you're going to give a capacity grant, or if you're going to ask, or if you're going to be thinking that way, then ask the community what they need. Don't offer like this paternalistic idea of that we know what's best for you. Fund capital. Oh my gosh, I'm going to tell you in a few minutes about our capital projects. But I believe that the way that we will solve Native homelessness is for Native people to build our own housing. We have seen the traditional housing not work. And I will say that in Seattle, we're seeing other people of color communities actually take this same idea. I'm following in their footsteps. Capital housing capital that works for Native community and people of color. Encourage shelters and permanent supportive housing to consider cultural responses, including design. You know, we're partnering with an agency that's building low-income housing. The number one thing we're doing is we're saying, this building should look and feel like an indigenous building from the inside to the outside. Why? Because it says something. It says that we care about our community's disparity. We care that when people come into this building that they feel that they're welcomed and that they're going to have people that understand them in this building. Insist that the funding is proportionate to the disparity. That was something that we are pushing at the Coalition to End Urban Native Homelessness. We now know that 10% of the homeless population in Seattle is Native, so we have that 7, we're pushing for the 10. And we're going to continue to be pushing and asking and in fact pleading on behalf of our community. Native-led housing, as I've already mentioned. Being trauma aware. Oh my goodness, this one is so huge. I believe that at the core of homelessness is racism. Todd alluded to that. I'll talk about that a lot. And there is trauma because of all of the racist systems that Native people have experienced that are just reverberating through the community. And so being a trauma-aware funder is just incredible, and I hope that you guys have a workshop on that someday. Encourage cultural humility for mainstream providers. I don't believe in cultural competency. No one can become culturally competent in someone else's culture unless you know them. It's been 20 or 30 years with someone, right? But can you be humble? Can you ask the community what they need? Can you understand other cultural perspectives? Can you stand up and do the dance with us and sing the songs? Understand that dominance of mainstream culture and find ways to break it up. You know, I think that one is so interesting because I believe that people of color should be at every single policy table, but sometimes those policy tables are just so isolating. And we need our allies and supporters to break up that dominance and invite cultural perspectives. So here's some of the work that we are doing to respond to the housing and homelessness crisis. I wanted to share with you this picture because this beautiful human right here, Joellen, she was sharing with me in this circle. She was sharing about how she had gotten into housing about a year ago. And her father had just died. And she has a traditional practice of holding on to some of their belongings for a year, and every day saying a prayer and smudging. She uses, I think, sweetgrass or sage to smudge those clothes every day. She keeps getting harassed by the manager of her housing because they think she's smoking weed because it smells a little bit similar. And she was just sharing how hard it was. How she didn't feel understood. She didn't feel like anyone was caring about her grief and her experience. And she shared with me in this circle, because we were talking about our new housing project, she's like, I can't wait to be in housing where someone understands who I am as a cultural person. And she is, I can't wait to get her in there too. We are building housing. Oops. Here we go. This is our new building in downtown Seattle. It's a rendering, of course. Yes, thank you. We're excited. This is a rendering. We go to construction in October. This will be 80 units of housing for Native people. We are doing several processes to make sure that we do this in a fair way and that we stay within fair housing. We are using a community preference policy that City of Seattle is doing, and we're also affirmatively marketing this housing to our community. And so we're really excited about the impact. We have always known how to house our relatives. We've always known. And so now we are going to have this opportunity to get to share it with the larger community. I happen to really love the design on this building. We were very intentional to make sure that it had Coast Salish design all the way up and down the building. Each of the floors will be named after a traditional medicine. So you might be on the sweetgrass floor, you might be on the sage floor, or whatever it might be, because the whole building is focused around healing and cultural connection. This is a quick picture of the program I mentioned already, Native Works. Native Works is a trauma-aware vocational rehabilitation program and informed by Indigenous knowledge. So we are seeing incredible results with this program where people are first are getting stabilized in a job and then finding housing. So a little bit backwards what we thought it would work. We thought people would get in housing first and then jobs, but this program is different in many ways. And I'm going to share it with you because I think it's important when we think about a culturally specific program. We said if one person comes one day a week for 1 hour a day to a job, that will be success. Because we have so many folks who haven't worked in so long, and the mainstream agencies were saying you got to come for 8 hours a day. That just doesn't make sense, right? So we started this program with that idea of being incredibly trauma aware, not making someone feel bad if they didn't show up that day, not making someone feel like we were not going to be there to support them. They get one-on-one mentoring every single day. This is an expensive program. I'm just going to say it, but we are seeing incredible success. All 3 of these beautiful humans have found housing. They have moved on to different jobs, and we're seeing some awesome success. But it's slow. We had a funder who recently defunded this program because it's taking time. And I was like, listen, we have 500 years of keeping us out of jobs. It's going to take some time. It's not going to take 500 years, but it's not going to be as fast and furious as other vocational rehabilitation programs. I always end with this line, that almost done. That prior to 1492, Native people had a 100% success rate in housing our people. And can we come back to this rate? Absolutely. We are going to do everything we can to ensure that every single baby, every single grandma, every single chronic adult out there is pulled back into the arms of the community. Because our ancestors are asking us and pushing us that way. And I talked earlier about what the ancestors are asking from us in this room. And I would ask you, how big is your brave? We need people to understand the culturally specific needs of our community. We need funders, we need allies, we need people to be asking, where is the Native community, where is the Native voice, and how can we help support them in the work that they're doing? How big is your break? Because it's going to take, I've seen it already. Every single thing we've done at the Chief Seattle Club in the past 4 years, people are like, what? How are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And we get questioned all the time. Because it's a shift, right? It's a shift. And can we make that shift? Because we have people of color who are more likely to be homeless than anyone else in this country. There were systems set up to intentionally to do that. So how do we break down those systems? We have to shift. We have to turn. We have to do things in a different way. And it requires boldness, it requires courage, and it requires, in my opinion as a Native person, it requires us to listen to our community and listen to the ancestors to move us forward into ways that will take care of our community. So thank you so much for your time. Here are a bunch of things about the stuff that I do.